So the first record is just self-titled, so it's Emika, because that is my whole journey with sound and production up to that point, where the whole point of that album was me trying to find my own signature sound. So to make an album that sounded like Emika. And that was my introduction to the world. And then people liked it. I was lucky. It was well received, and I was then invited to perform a lot, which is something that I didn't plan to do at all. I wanted to be in the studio doing sound design and production, and I had no concept about how to be a performer, and I really didn't want to do it. But the people wanted it, so I thought, okay, you have to go with the flow, you know? And then I traveled a lot between East and West Europe and Russia and America. And so the second album really became about me traveling around, particularly in Eastern Europe, and seeing through my own eyes the history of Europe. And I felt like many stories of oppression and liberation from Europe, from my parents' generation and my generation, all kind of came together with my story, trying to find my way in the world as a young woman, as a producer, with the music business, with my independence and freedom and creativity. So that became Dwa. And then after that, I set up my own record label and decided to just do everything on my own. And I was only in Berlin, and I stopped looking around at that world outside, and I looked just at the world inside, and worked with like really hard beats. Like with Dwa, I totally hated beats. I used to mix all the beats at the back, and at that time there was like Lady Gaga and all this like really aggressive EDM pop stuff, and I just like, ugh, I didn't want anything to do with it. So I mixed everything very soft and wide, and then with Drei, I got back into like my Berlin, you know, love affair with the tough, beat-driven scene. I think Berlin also has its own story and struggle for independence and for its own identity. And somehow that was my thing as well at the same time. I feel like Berlin, in terms of creativity, is on a decline. And I think that the fame or the awareness that everybody has of the scene is kind of standing in the way of everybody moving forward. And like, to be honest, I feel quite like uncomfortable there at the moment. But it still feels like home, you know, and you have like rough times and smooth times, and I'm kind of just doing my own thing. I'm not really like feeling that inspired right now. It's more like I don't want to see what's going on. I'm just going to wait for it to evolve to the next thing and then see if it comes back to where I am, you know. I just like to live there. There's so many amazing things about Berlin that really make me feel comfortable. Like one kind of stupid example is Pfand. Like when you buy drinks, you can return the bottle to the shop and get some money, or you can just leave it in the streets, and then people that need some money can collect the bottles. And it's like recycling, taking care of people that need some short change. And like, it's reasons like that why I live in Berlin. Like, I moved there before I knew about any techno culture. That came like a year after. I was like, oh, there's clubs here, you know. So Berlin for me is more just like about my private life, really. It's not really a challenge, to be honest. It's like the most amazing thing I have in my life right now, because I'm my own boss. People try and kind of get in the middle and, you know, take control in this very like old school kind of way, but it just doesn't really work. And I'm actually really free to do whatever I want now. And I 2 weeks ago I just recorded my first symphony in Prague with 60 players in Czech radio, and amazing soprano Michaela Shumová, and that's been the last 3 years of my life. It's making this huge orchestral piece with loads of bass and echo concepts, and it really sounds like my music, but it's a symphony with a soprano. I'm not even performing in it this time. And I was able to do it because of Kickstarter, and my fans gave money. So like 499 people all gave money, and in the end I was overfunded. I asked for 20,000 euros and I got 25,500 euros. And that just like can't happen in the old music industry. It's like, it still blows my mind now. I still can't believe that I've done that, you know, and I never would have had the freedom to do something like that if I was still in, you know, the previous chapter with everything. Like, I was just really excited to like just show everyone what, because it was my real life, you know. I was visiting studios, I was working with my music teacher from school, finishing the score. I was losing my way in between, I was losing my confidence, you know, and it was just really cool to put my real life in real time, the production, out there to my fans, rather than, you know, you release a record, you're already working on your next one, and then everyone wants to ask you about that record, but it's like, it's your past life already. So it was so nice to talk to everyone about this thing that I want to do, you know, and nobody knew if it was going to happen. And it was like, you know, I just lived on the edge for like 3 months. I didn't think about that I was going to have to live for 3 months with this unfinished project in the world already, you know. It was like, I had the Kickstarter app on my phone and I was like looking at it in the middle of the night, like, you know, I was like, I went really crazy. It really like pushed me to be open, because you're halfway through, you've got half of the money, you've got half of the trust in people, and then everyone else is kind of like looking and following and thinking, yeah, maybe I'll give her something, you know, and you have to work really hard to like not convince them, but just to inspire them, you know. So I feel like as a creative person, I was really pushed to have to give more, like give. And I didn't even record the music yet. That was just like one phase, you know, and so I was exhausted after that. And then I had to plan the production, and then I had to sit and be the producer in the whole thing, you know, with like 80 people and a film crew and different photographers. And by the time I got there, I was like exhausted, you know. I was like holding onto the table, like listening to the music for the first time, because I don't know how it would sound. I'd never heard it ever, other than in my mind. So that's really been like the most amazing project that I've ever done, because it's like so free of all music industry standards. I love Prague, and I was looking for a way to do more work there the last few years, and I feel really good there. As a woman, I just feel really good there. Like, I look around, all the other women, they look like me, you know, you're like tall, and like I just feel like some kind of home there for me with the women in the Czech Republic. And I just wanted to be there more. I thought it would be good for me. And I really enjoy working with Czech musicians because they have a really special attitude. They're really open-minded, and they're really just willing to play. They don't have this arrogance that you often get with classical players, like this cliche, you know, classical type player. And I think it has a lot to do with maybe growing up more around folk music or gypsy music or Eastern European folk music. And I think that Czech musicians just have a different background, you know, like as a musician you are the result of what you've listened to up until that moment. And I think that Czech musicians are very special because they've grown up playing Dvořák and all of this like amazing poetry basically. They weren't in like the Royal Academy of Music being whipped every day to play their scales. It's like the education is very different there, I think, in Czech Republic. And so I wanted this like Czech heart, because for me there is a thing like a Czech heart. Like I feel like the Czechs have this like strong heart rather than strong minds. But when I listen to classical music, it's like I like one phrase or one part or one page, and I'll just like repeat, I'll just constantly put it back to that one part. And I always think, why can't we just have that for half an hour, you know? So I kind of like really selective parts of Mahler symphonies and Shostakovich and Rachmaninoff and some Prokofiev, but not really the la-di-da stuff, the more like serious stuff. Basically anything that's really serious and deep, but minimal. I really like simplistic classical stuff. So like I like a lot of piano works by Beethoven, or like preludes, or Chopin nocturnes are some of my favourite things. I just think that those composers that were able to write for the orchestra but could also sit alone and play the piano. It's like, I was listening to Moonlight Sonata today on the plane by Beethoven, and now I've recorded with the orchestra. When I listen to Moonlight Sonata, like when I was little, you learn to play it, you know, as a nice piano piece. But now I've had the experience with the orchestra, and when I listen to it, it sounds so symphonic. Like there's this melodies between the thumbs. You know, as a piano player, when you learn that as a kid, it's like left hand, right hand, and here's the melody and here's the bass lines. But today I was listening to it and imagining the orchestra, and you hear all these little melodies like that Beethoven was obviously realizing, you know, and it's like yeah, I just think it's amazing that composers can play the piano and make it sound so symphonic. Well, I don't really plan it. That's the thing. I'm not really sure what I'm going to play. So I have loads of different things with me. I have, so I just have everything split into beats, bass lines, synths, and then I've got my vocals and like vocal looping, and I have like tiny pieces of all of my work like mixed up, you know, and I just really leave it until the moment to decide what I want to play. And like, thanks to the technology that you've got today, you know, you can freestyle everything if you want, you know. So like if, for example, if I wanted to, I could just play all the beats and bass lines, and I could take out all the other stuff. If I just wanted to do like a really hard performance, then I could do that. I won't, because I know that everyone here wants to hear like their favorite songs and stuff. But you know, like you just feel it from the crowd, the way that it should go. And the shows where I have decided what I wanted to play, where it's like, okay, it's a festival, I've got 45 minutes, I have to fit this song, this song, this song. You go there and you do your set list, and it doesn't feel right. Like I always feel like an imposter or like a fake. So yeah, I just freestyle basically.